Hello and welcome everyone. Happy New Year, FY 2025. And it's so good to be here with you all. What we're going to talk to you about here today is some of our learnings from Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And the topic here today is Black Friday Unwrapped Solutions and Insights for Building Resilience in E-commerce. Now, e-commerce has been a passion of mine for a number of years, and today I'm super excited that I have Gus with me, who is actually on the deck executing and operating an awesome business at Div Brands, and we'll talk about their Black Friday and Cyber Monday experience. But just to kind of kick us off, housekeeping, everybody is in listen-only mode. The session is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking screenshots or anything else. You'll get the recording later. And feel free to ask your questions in the chat window, and we'll answer all the Q&A, all the questions in the Q&A section towards the end. And if you want to read our code of conduct, please go ahead and look on our website for our code of conduct. But before we move on, actually, quick plug. We're actually going to be at NRF, and here we're talking about retail, we're talking about e-commerce, we're talking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. There's going to be a lot of this being talked about at NRF, so we're super excited to be there. And if you're there, come see us. We have another story. We'll be taking stage with the Tile Shop. They've gone through an incredible e-commerce transformation themselves. You can come meet us at our booth 739, or you can click on that link or scan the QR code and book a meeting with us at Netlify. So we'll be there in full force. All right. So with that, real quick to introduce ourselves, I'm Varun Nera. I'm the head of value engineering at Netlify. I lead development of composable solutions that really help drive business value through our product. Prior to this, I was a chief digital officer of an agency called Altudo. Been in the business 20 years, going through content and commerce modernization for my customers. Gus, if you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bus. I'm CTO of Div Brands. I'm not 20 years, almost 18 now, working in the field. I'm now working CTO, started as a software engineer, worked also as a product manager. Over the years, worked in agencies, so I had the chance to work with fintechs, e-commerce, etc. But in the past few years, being focused mostly on retail and this. Based in Scotland, but from my accent, not very Scottish. I'm actually from Brazil.
That's incredible. If you want to tell us a little bit about Div Brands and your business, Gus, if you want to introduce us to Div Brands.
So at Div Brands, we call ourselves a house of brands, where we pretty much iterate, try different ideas, build brands, and see what sticks or not. So over the years, we launched 17 brands operating in 19 countries. Over the last few years, and probably the one that we are mostly proud recently is Bearskin, which is our outdoor company. And we use a lot of data-driven insights, a lot of technology to figure out what's working, what's not working, improve our products, improve the whole thing on our supply chain and the customer experience.
Excellent. And I'll kind of give a little bit of background about Netlify. So if you haven't heard of Netlify, our founders basically coined the term Jamstack that really revolutionized how the web would be modernized. Today, everything is built basically with JavaScript, APIs, and other markup coming together. From those early days, back in 2014, when the company was founded, to more than 3,500 services that power a huge portion of sites in commerce, more than 1 billion unique visitors, 50 million plus sites and apps and storefronts. And now it's more than 6 million developers who have been on our platform, building and developing incredible experiences. We do have some of the most recognizable logos deploying and managing their customer experience with us. A lot of these verticals and these logos may be very familiar to you. So yeah, we've been doing this for quite some time now. But let's talk about really Div Brands, right? And Gus, I would love to understand a little bit more about, while we're going to get to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and operating at scale, I think there was a little bit of journey there for div brands to sort of come of age. And over the last few years, you kind of really modernized as a CTO, kind of really modernized the tech stack. If you want to tell us a little bit about how your e-commerce has evolved over the years.
Yeah, I mean, in 2021, when I joined in, we had a single monolith. It was a single application, which is kind of did the work, but it was terrible in the sense of if anything goes wrong, if we ever need any maintenance, and even if the database deadlocked, that will be in downtime. Downtime is we lose revenue. So, and that was unmaintainable because nothing made sense. We tried even ChatGPT at that time would freeze if you try to make sense of the source code. So the approach we did was pretty much let me grab a sledgehammer and see what I can make of it. So we started migrating to Shopify, and later on we decided to go more headless approach. We figure out their unique properties on our business, especially on the way try to do things that can't fit in something out of the box. So we started customizing building services. So at some point, 22, we started building this mesh, and it was not very well because we had, instead of getting the advantage of every approach, we got the disadvantage of every approach. Managed to survive, but there was a lot of work. So pretty much we decided to build from ground zero in there with everything from scratch. And in the end, we decided to build a lot of stuff in-house in the approach that you call a composable commerce. We're starting building those pieces, pick them up together. And this is pretty much how it looks like today, which looks like a spaghetti of services and things going on. Right now, we're maintaining over 15 different workloads and services. And the way we count that is pretty much whatever is a pod or a container in a Kubernetes, we count it as one. So this is the lay of the land now. And of course, looks complicated, and you say, yeah, you need a huge team of that. But we're maintaining that with a team of 12 people now. And when we first started building that, we managed for a long time maintain that with a team of 4 people. But that's another story for another time. But this is pretty much how it looks for it when it's, sorry?
But no, I was gonna say fair enough. But I think I was like pretty amazed when I saw this, and really talking about e-commerce coming of age, right? From the core capabilities that you see represented here. This is how you can build a truly resilient e-commerce application from the basics of like, yeah, e-commerce capabilities. Well, I need a cart, I need catalog, I need, checkout, I need payment, to everything from, pre-order capture to post-order capture systems coming together with messaging systems and alerts and everything else that goes into keeping the lights on, right? It really gets to the point where, it's not for the faint of heart, right? It's not just, hey, I turn on a Shopify storefront and everything just will always work. Especially when you're operating a real enterprise like div brands. So that brings me to quantifying what Black Friday and Cyber Monday means to retail businesses. So in that, I did a little bit of research. I wanted to share these stats to say, it's remarkable what Black Friday and Cyber Monday have come to be. Now, we've all known Black Friday for a long time. And, if you go back, like I'm looking back at my 20, 30 years, and there was a time when there was no Cyber Monday. So Black Friday was still huge. And then somebody, said, hey, we should be doing Cyber Monday because, iPhone and internet and everything else, like people are going to shop all the time. And especially on Monday, we're going to do a special deal. Now, to kind of put this into perspective, how Cyber Monday has kind of closed the gap with Black Friday, sales growth, 10 billion versus 13 billion. 10% versus 7.3% year over year increase. Basically, Cyber Monday, by some measure, is even, beating Black Friday sales. When you look at it from a mobile versus desktop experience, this is important, right? Because a lot of us shop on our mobile phones. 80% of the traffic accounted for in mobile versus 74. It is clearly a leading form factor in executing e-commerce well. So while we are all building experiences and we're testing them with desktop, it is just important to note that mobile is really where a lot of engagement is happening. But if you look at slightly more finer print in there, the conversion rate for desktop is still more than mobile. while there's a lot of browsing happening on mobile, desktop seems to be still where people are actually going to place those orders. Average order volume, of course, we can't not talk about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and not talk about Shopify. So average cart value is more than $100, but you can see both Black Friday and Cyber Monday are kind of like neck to neck in that, right? And lastly, peak sales volume. Apparently the first minute of Black Friday was the peak of $4.2 million in transactions on Shopify. And on the other hand, shoppers spend about 15 million per minute in a very important time frame between 8 and 10 p.m., apparently. So just anecdotally to say, well, yeah, this is real scale. If you are in retail, this is very, very important. But I want to again bring this back to you, Gus, and Div Brands, and talk about Div Brands executing their storefront, powering their storefront with Netlify. How do we do it together, right? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for us? So please go ahead if you want
to. I mean, I come from a time in my early career when success was measured like, oh, the server is down. It was so popular, it's down. In e-commerce, we don't have that advantage. And it's like, if it's down, we're losing sales. And I think that is important. Performance, making sure we can scale as the customers are coming in, and you can't predict how many people are coming in. That is essential. And from the numbers, we managed to have like a very, very high uptime. I mean, we didn't detect downtime. This number actually was given by Netlify, but we saw 100% in our end. And I mean, we managed to increase by over 230% from last year without any hiccups. And that is pretty much how it looks like for us. It needs to be like flawless, I would say.
That is remarkable. That last metric there, guys, I think is remarkable, right? And that kind of, just to put it into perspective, when it comes to Netlify, more than 40 billion requests. Now, the way we count requests, it's more than 1 million per second. But when we look at legitimate requests, when you're talking about page views and things like that, more than 100K. With more than 1 million malicious, suspicious, blocked. Now, just to kind of put this into perspective, right? Okay, uptime and all this good stuff. If you just look at the request served, that's almost like executing 2 Amazon Prime days at the same time on Netlify, right? It's just the entire scale of it versus 3 times the Shopify's peak transaction volume. If you look at just the scale of what happened in those 2 days. And if we're talking about security vulnerabilities, right? IBM in like a report, like in 2024, they talk about this cost of data breach report, right? And they said there's roughly about $5 million impact per million requests. And in that, if you look at it, it's an average cost of breach for retailers, which is $5 million. Now, even if 1% of those malicious requests really succeeded, that could account to almost $5 billion in damages. So in a way, Netlify is really on the forefront of protecting e-commerce from these malicious activity. Now, kind of moving a little bit further, I think we're going to talk about performance a little bit, right? Because performance is like the key. We're going to talk about performance. We're going to talk about resilience. Like, to understand resilience, you got to understand the scale of what performance you have to host and manage. And then that tells us a little bit about, what resilience you can offer when you're offering that level of performance. So conversion rates, a quick example here. It says, the highest e-commerce conversion rate on a page occurs if the page loads within 1 to 2 seconds. So the question, you want to ask yourself as an e-commerce provider, right? What does that metric mean for me, right? When it comes to user abandonment, 53% of mobile visitors leave a page when it loads more than three seconds. Revenue impact, a second or delay in page load can result in 7% reduction in conversions. But also, in other words, right, if you have those high bounce rates, when a page goes from like 1 to 3 seconds even, you have a chance of bounce rate of 32%. So you're just really playing in that 1 to 3 second mark. Anything beyond that, forget about it, right? You're doing your business a disservice. But also search engine ranking, right? Now we say, okay, performance is good and it's in the eye of the beholder and my customers are happy. But what about your competition, right? So if you're loading, if and this is something that Mozilla did, which is if they improve their page speed by 2.2 seconds and experience a 15% increase in organic traffic. So there's some real correlation in how performance can impact your presence online and compared to your competition. Now, to take this a little bit further, we're going to say, oh, everybody, is going to talk about Core Web Vitals. They've come to be the standard, but not for all. Like, I know, Gus, you have a different take on this, but just to highlight the three, right? What is a good measure for LCP and IMP and CLS? 2.5 seconds, right? And interaction to next paint, this is the latest one. They updated one of the metrics and put this one in. It's 200 milliseconds. And cumulative layout shift is 0.1 seconds is considered good. Now, does everybody need to achieve this? Probably not. You may be working really well without these, but it is a way to at least gauge the performance of your site to say, well, if I did want to improve performance, here's what I should be looking at. And if you are achieving these, right, there are things like an engagement. You're looking at users that are 24% less likely to bounce if those thresholds are met. So you're immediately, hopefully, solving for that bounce rate just by hitting these KPIs. And that 0.1 second improvement in conversion, in the loading speed, can lead to 8% increase in conversions. Basically, any effort you put into achieving that, if you're able to talk about ROI, that's your ROI right there. And 9.2% increase in average order value. So it's not just more conversions, but it's also higher conversions. So I want to just put that into context, but I want to kind of just turn this back to Gus to talk about how did they prepare for resilience and what do they think about performance. So Gus, if you want to tell us about, some of these things we were discussing earlier in what resilience means to dev brands.
Yeah, as you just pointed out very, very well, performance is everything in commerce for conversion. And that is, especially in a performance-driven business, which is ours, we really, really prepare in advance there. So for Black Friday, I think first one is pretty much, I would say, turn it up to 11, how I call it, is whatever backend service or anything that needs to be live, and we just over provision. For those days, doesn't matter if it's gonna cost a lot, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So we usually increase 230% our spend on anything that we can we can swap the values of CPUs, RAM, GPU. Of course, we can't do that on Netlify. But I know Netlify did that as well because I had a quick call with the team on right before Black Friday. So it's pretty much like industry standard to do that. So databases, they can handle more requests. Kafka can handle bigger throughputs. Redis instances, they can cache more things. All those things. That is one of the things. I mean, better safe than sorry. But from our tests before, we would be fine if we didn't do it. We just did as a precaution. In performance as well, decreasing load times, the time for first interaction, and also reducing bundle sizes. We are very, very picky with the way we handle, especially packages on JavaScript in the front end. Right now, we just doing the housekeeping for the end of the year. We're replacing a vendor just because their solution has a 300 kilobyte bundle in the front end. We figured out, if we just pulled from this other vendor, it's going to be like 50. So this is the kind of optimizations that 300 kilobytes is nothing when you're running on a fast internet on a setup like you definitely have at home. But if you're throttling testing things on slow 3G and a lot of customers in places that when they are in a rush, that actually matters. So
we were just talking about mobile. That's really where it's going to get critical. Yeah.
Another thing we do a lot, and which is probably where we see most impact, is optimistic UI and asynchronous flows. So if you go to our websites and put something in the cart, you're not gonna wait the cart. It's not gonna spin or anything. It's gonna assume you add it to the cart. It's in the cart. If it was not supposed to be in the cart, it shouldn't be there, right? So we do that a lot. As soon as we don't wait for the checks in most of things, and a lot of people get scared. Oh, what if there is one case where the customer is using Internet Explorer 6.0 in 2000? Yeah, that customer, if they manage to get to this point, I think we have other problems. So, what the biggest thing we saw in there is, for example, the cart to order. If the payment went through, we don't need to wait for the order to be generated in our system. We assume that work, we show the customer everything is all right. We take it from here, and that managed just for the customer to see from the cart to order. As soon as they hit payment, it's taking now in average 2 seconds instead of 30 seconds.
Wow.
So to the point, hey, that that is like probably one of the biggest things we're proud of in terms of optimizing performance, not only on the video unloading, but on the interaction aspect. We have a lot of automated checks as well. So we have scrapers, alerts. We call the seagull flock, the flock of seagulls is our system. We because it's a bunch of different workers that does different stuff and they start yelling at you. We call it seagull because they come make a lot of noise, shit all over the place and fly away. Yeah, we have a lot of puns and this kind of analogies in the way we name our systems and things. So that is part of our development culture. So yeah, the seagulls, they fly in, they look for missing images, empty block of contents, typos, anything that can go wrong. Even things externally as well. For example, if it's an external service for reviews and score went down, if we start yelling, like pop up in Slack channels. In some cases, when it's critical, if no one responds to that or does anything, then it starts escalating and going over people, like sending people direct messages just to annoy them until something is fixed.
No. Fair enough.
Yeah. Sorry?
No, please go ahead. I was gonna.
Yeah, we also do a code freeze, pretty much no changes during the peak season, unless it's a bug fix, but that is, but we try to not make changes. We stopped this year mid-October, but I mean, there's always some last minute changes, some last minute campaigns, but over the week, Black Friday, absolutely no frozen. We do a lot of manual checks as well. We get the whole team, everyone from different departments involved. And because we really believe, no, if one person looks at it, it's going to be flawed. Especially if all developers are looking at it, they are going to look at the same stuff. But as soon as you put someone from a different team, marketing is going to find another problem. The team from logistics is going to find another problem. So we really get everyone involved to look, what are they seeing that we don't see? So manual reviews. This year, we also hired an external Q&A agency, did an amazing job because they broke the website and our flows in ways we didn't expect to. So it's that joke. You make a bar, the customer comes in, asks for a beer, they jump the window, ask for a beer, they get a beer. Then you hire someone externally better than an agency, then the customer jumps in and enters the bar, asks where the bathroom, and everything explodes. So that was another good thing we did. We also do a lot of smokes tests in Chaos Monkey. I mean, we don't did in purpose this year, but that is something we're doing for next year. And when I say in purpose is we had a last minute, a week before Black Friday, there was a botched deploy, which pretty much, long story short, blocked a lot of services to connect to each other and the database, meaning that for a period of 4 hours, no orders came in our database. And then there was like, oh, everything is broken. In the end, we never had a downtime on customer orders, just the systems that were down. Yep. That was essentially 90% of our systems were just effectively turned off. This gave us both confidence to know everything is going to be fine if we scale, or even if the database crashes and decide I'm taking the day off, because the way we build event-driven systems, things we can recover everything that happened and move it through. So in this day, just had a delay of a few hours and then everything went well. So that's why pretty much the benefit of going composable and Mac, because when things are decoupled, they are working independent. You limit the blast radius, and well, those 4 hours in this period of the year, even not being Black Friday, could have already justified the investment on that big complexity of architecture.
Makes sense. And yeah, I mean, totally right. So for everything from pre-scaling to making sure you have these external dependencies or anything else that resolve where you can really hit that performance, to automated checks, to making sure you can enforce a code freeze, to partner with external agencies, right? Not just your team. And then, of course, the chaos monkey, right? Just turn things off and see what happens. Right? It's fairly interesting, but just to kind of complement that, if we're talking about Netlify, because at the end of the day, the storefront runs on Netlify, here's everything Netlify offers that Div Brands doesn't have to worry about, right? From content delivery, auto scaling, caching, intelligent traffic routing, we take care of all of it with our global edge and CDN with caching, low latency, really fast compute, those core web vitals you want to achieve, or any other aspects of really having fast throughput. You use functions, you use caching, you use a bunch of other things. Security compliance, you have Netlify's WAF, real-time data processing. There's Netlify Connect, async workloads, and other things that you can bring to the table. Personalization, edge functions. You have log drains. You have Netlify Deploy that allows you to do quick rollbacks, recovery, all that good stuff. So all of this paired up, I think, with everything that you already are managing in that architecture really brings the system to be way more resilient than anything that would be otherwise sort of self-managed. So with that, I think of what you were talking about a little bit earlier, I think it'd be helpful to kind of double click on just observability and risk mitigation, right? Just what do you observe? How do you mitigate risk? I know you're talking about alerts and, systems where, you get notified about what's actually broken or is about to break. And what do you observe, right? I know you've given us a few parameters here. If you want to walk us through, what are you looking at? And then how do you communicate with the team on what needs to be actioned on?
Yeah, I have like a massive dashboard that I use, monitoring every aspect of the business. And we monitor a few KPIs from e-commerce metrics like conversion rates, cart to orders, checkout orders, AOV, return rates, cancellation rates, because once you observe that, you establish a baseline. If something is off on those numbers, you're definitely gonna know something is very weird. And that's important. Like, dropping conversion rate doesn't mean that customers stop buying. Maybe it's a deploy that is breaking stuff and it's not triggering an error. That is actually one of the cases where, looking at that metric, we could actually figure out technical issues. They also see logistic metrics from order cycle times. Is there a percentage of orders lost in transit? That doesn't mean that packages are being lost. It could mean like customers not being communicated on delays, or things they can't track, and that obviously leads to customer frustration. So we also look at customer support from external services like Trustpilot and other websites, but CSAT and internal metrics to make sure customers are getting response. Payment metrics are also important as well, like acceptance rate, dispute rates, because those things can also affect conversion rate ultimately. So we also looking at, some of them are in a dashboard, some of them are in external services. We leverage a lot of different services for backend monitoring, front end monitoring, and all of those are connected to alerts. On backend, we use the default ones, Grafana and Prometheus. They're connected to alerts. We do a lot of heartbeat checks as well, and we check if they are failing not once, but we don't make things fault proof, but fault resistance. So it's okay if something fails once or twice. They are designed to actually fail and recover from that. But if they fail 3 times in a row, which we call 3 strikes, then that will trigger alerts. Depending on the workloads, if they're critical, that will trigger automatic incidents as well for the team. And those are things we check uptime on both internal services and external services every 10 seconds, which also connected to alerts and heartbeats. Request time as well, because sometimes things are working, but they're kind of working. So if things are laggy, you should look at that. Even backlog of events, make heavily use of Kafka. So things are not moving. That could be a potential issue. And dashboards also are connected to alerts. They connected, and those alerts, sometimes they come as a pager alert, but most of the times they're like Slack or trigger an instance. And we figure out that on Slack, at least, makes it easier. Yeah, that would summarize everything we're doing in terms of alerts and knowing what is going on.
No, that's perfect, because I think we've covered like what is a scale, where do we modernize? We've kind of talked about the architecture, we've talked about performance, we've talked about observability, right? But really, when Black Friday, Cyber Monday is done, or as you're getting to the tail end of that, I think the question is, how do you measure success? How do you measure success for yourself, for your team, for your overall business? If you want to talk a little bit about that, Gus, in what it means to have a successful Black Friday, Cyber Monday from like a web team's perspective, right? I'm sure the business will have a bunch of metrics that they will count dollars and cents and everything else. But if you want to tell us about some of what we were discussing earlier, yeah.
I think keep things green. So we call it no ripening of services. Make sure they are all green in the sense that we didn't get any alerts, nothing broke. As I said, they might fail, but at least if they're not hitting the 3-strike rule, that is fine, which we managed to achieve this year finally. So, and that goes from a lot of services. They go from the cart recovery, fraud checking orders, automations and logistics, make sure that the order automatically gets picked up for dispatching or changing. Checking if things are still on stock as well, that's important. So all the services in green are important. Uptime is another one. I mean, it's not only about being up and selling, but even if we have faults in the backend, can we still continuously deliver, make sure customers don't lose the capability of selling? We had zero downtime, no, zero downtime during Black Friday. So that means we monitor from different regions, different providers, at least more than 2, to make sure that we actually monitoring proper, and which is good because we came across cases where one provider detect a downtime, the other one doesn't, and what something is off. So we always try at least to monitor from 2 different providers, 2 different regions. And this year we didn't have any downtime over Black Friday, and over 24 at least we managed. The first time we got double nines in our uptime. That means only 36 minutes over the year that we are actually not selling, compared to 23 when we were, and before we were working with Netlify with when we were working as a specific provider, that was the downtime we're getting almost weekly. So a huge advance on that. So conversion metrics as well, we keep an eye on those business metrics because we try to establish a baseline during the year, because those metrics are not going to change on Black Friday. It's going to increase the number, but the conversion rate, those numbers, they don't shift a lot. So that help. If they shift a lot, they shift for the better, not for the worse. So during the year, it helps us establish a baseline. Like, this is the minimum threshold where things should be working, and we monitor that. Because as I mentioned before, conversion rates, if they are off the baseline, it doesn't mean the customers being a problem, like customers are not being able to actually purchase or not being able to follow their journey on the website. Not breaking the ice is another one. Keeping the glass intact, not making deploys. So that was another one for this year, which we managed to achieve as well. Response time is also important. Like, we want to make sure that the full product page loads in less than 3 seconds, which is an arbitrary number, but it's not actually very arbitrary from what we spoke about that affects conversion rates. So making sure things are loading fast. And error rates. Now that is an arbitrary number, which is, we look at front end exceptions, is anytime it hits 300 per hour, that might be an indicator of something is off. We don't look at percentage of errors, but actually a fixed number, because there is normal to have front end errors with the huge amount of browsers, devices, and etc. But that number, if it's over that number, it's where we establish, okay, might be worth checking. Something is off, something's not off, which this year also didn't trigger the alerts, which is good. Yeah, I think those are the things we measure. But of course, might change. You never know. But
Yeah. No, this makes a lot of sense, right? That having these benchmarks in place, knowing what success looks like, right? You have workflows. Are they staying green? And things will go wrong, but having that 3-strike rule in place to say, well, unless we're seeing more than 3 incidents, We don't have to, like you said, break the glass and pull the alarm, right? Uptime, you're talking about conversion metrics. But I think it's important to have something there that says, this is our response time. We've benchmarked it. This is what we expect. And if we walk away with 3 seconds or less, we've done our job, right? Error rates, to having a number helps the team organize and say, okay, when do we react? Right? When do we react to when error rates are a little bit out of that threshold? So again, all of this is great, but I know there's always room for improvement, right, guys? In e-commerce, it never stops. So I'm sure you have some ideas for what you think you want to optimize further, convert better, convert faster, convert higher. So you want to tell us about these ongoing improvements that you're planning?
Yeah, one of the first things we want when we're planning is making things fully dynamic, moving through server components and building blocks instead of the whole website. We do have, and that is probably the biggest legacy feature we're building out this quarter, making sure we can build blocks and not rebuilding the website on any change. Dress rehearsals as well. We need to test more scenarios of things going wrong, both to build better responses to it, because as I mentioned, the Archaea's monkey, which was actually Julius deploy error, that only happened because we had an incident right before Black Friday. If that happened during Black Friday, we wouldn't have a plan, I mean, things went well, but it's better to make sure that if that happens again, you know what to do, keep calm and carry on. And so we're planning more dress rehearsals, which is also fun. Just go there, press the big red button once in a while and see what happens. So another point to that, and that is actually another learning we had, is making sure your alerts are fine, right? Because we had one problem. We fluctuated over the year from one point that our alerts were very, very sensitive. So everything would trigger an alert and an incident, to the point that I was waking up in the middle of the evening, my natural sleep, like 3 times, because something was 5 minutes delayed. You don't want that, because then you start ignoring the alerts. But then we figure out at some point, oh, this is fine. This is never broken anymore. And then we figured out, oh, we went too far on not making, it was actually broken, but the alerts are fine. So testing, especially those plans for what if things goes wrong, helps you figure out and learn how to build better. Figure out what are your weak points. A lot of separation of concerns more to improve resilience, avoid single points of failures, and making things more segmented. That is another big transformation we're doing now, which is, in the end, we build things when we thought would make sense together, but we figure out now it's making more use of Conway's law. Like, no, separate. Even if product for marketing and product for the team that develops the product, those seems to be the same thing. They don't need to be in the same place. Those systems operated by different people, segment those. Might means more stuff for us to maintain, but I think that in the end, if you start mimicking the systems as you mimic the business, it makes things easier and easier to understand, and it's more in a business matter, or like for other teams, how do they engage, how they understand concepts, instead of trying to invent something new and try to make sure they understand it and how to operate it. So, and that scale things in a bigger scale. We thought testing things on 2x or 3x were okay, but we should have tested for bigger scale, because that means that whatever we didn't test for bigger scale, we need to refactor now. We need to improve. Interesting case is on 2023, we had a system to match the orders to warehouses and dispatch to the customer. We didn't expect the volume, and so to the point that I was having to run that locally in my machine, because it would means that could run faster than in the server if we have to make it last minute adjustments. Then we did the thing for this year. It was working, but we tested 3x, and then after Black Friday, it was taking like 18 hours to actually run through all the old backlog of orders, like, which was way below our desirable SLA, that once an order comes in 2 hours, it needs to be dispatched, not in 18 hours.
Gotcha.
So that is one thing that we need to refactor. Now we're going to refactor that for probably 20x, because we don't want to touch this next year again.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I know we're running short on time. We only have a couple minutes left here. But I really want to thank you guys for taking the time and walking us through your plans and how you operate. I really want to thank Div Brands for their partnership with Netlify and continuing to trust us with your business, right? Which is entirely, let's say, e-commerce. But I want to see if I can take at least one or two questions before we drop here. So, what are you using to monitor front end? Faro, Gus, I think you kind of covered this, but you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we're using Sentry and very happy using that. So it pretty much monitors exceptions, errors, even replay sessions. That helps a lot to figure out what customers, if something breaks, what caused the break. One classic case when we figure out our carousel was not working is we if we receiving complaints like a user can't swipe on the carousel. Took us a while to figure out that the customers were actually swiping in the different direction we never accounted for. So
Mm.
even those small details helps a lot to monitor on the front end.
All right. Well, I think we're all out of time here. So if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on LinkedIn. Feel free to DM us, and we'll be more than happy to answer more questions. And I really thank you all for attending this incredible webinar today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you.